What's going on, everybody? We are live and we are back. It has been, a couple months, not even a couple months, probably a month and a half since you've seen us three grace the screen, whether you're on YouTube, Facebook, or Twitter. Some jubilant episodes over the last couple months, whether it was the Mets making the playoffs, whether it was the Mets winning the wild card, or whether it was the Mets advancing to the NLCS. Then we had our recap show, I want to say about 40 days ago-ish, when the Mets fell to the Dodgers in 6. But here we are. You can see the ticker down below. We're here to discuss one thing and one big thing only, and that is Juan Soto. The saga has ended. Soto stays in New York, but he switches boroughs from Bronx to Queens. He is now a Met. Steve Cohen backing up the Brinks truck, an unprecedented contract, a contract that is now the largest in all of sports history, $765 million guaranteed dollars over 15 years. The Mets got their guy. We talked about it on the closing episode. Kyle, me and you have been texting back and forth on it probably for what seems like 6 months now, and what seemed like just a delusional long shot dream quickly turned into a reality. And here we are 2 days, not even 36 hours after the signing. It's starting to settle in. The Yankees fans are still crying on social media. The Mets fans are still jubilant. I think if we would have done this show, let's say an hour after the news broke, 20 minutes after the news broke, it would have been one of those go live, who cares what you say, who cares what you do, jubilant episodes. Now we've had some time to marinate on it, think about it, and talk about it. So, Kyle, initial thoughts on the signing, and we'll get right into it.
Yeah, on the closing show that we had after the Dodgers, I said this should have been the first priority for the Mets. Again, you're competing with the Dodgers, right? Again, and they make the big move first in the offseason by signing Blake Snell, and you're like, okay, how are we going to get better? And again, you get a once-in-a-generational free agent, and this whole narrative of the Mets, the whole signing, Juan Soto is going to be great. He's going to do his thing. But the whole signing creates this whole move of narrative that the Dodgers aren't the only heavyweights when it comes to free agent destinations, right? The Mets are now in that super heavyweight division with the Dodgers that say, hey, if we want a guy, we're going to go get him. And this showed that. And again, you're getting a once-in-a-generational talent. Again, he's in his prime, just turned 26. They don't come around often. And Cohen got his guy, and that's what he wanted to do. So, again, I'm super excited, and I can't wait to see what happens after this. But again, it's turning into a destinational place in Queens.
Yeah, it's a statement signing. It's more than just bringing in a great player. As far as New York goes, I'm not going to get into this whole big brother, little brother thing, but from a team that's always been in the shadows of New York, especially when it came to signing, big time players going back to my younger days when George Steinbrenner was the owner of the Yankees. In fact, if George Steinbrenner was the owner of the Yankees now, we probably wouldn't have got him. He was a little bit more ruthless when it came to his business dealings and not being overshadowed by the Mets. But at number one, it sets the tone that we're at least on the same level as the Yankees in terms of our commitment to win. And players are willing to come to the Mets just as readily, if not more, than they are to going to the Yankees. Remember, it wasn't long ago where the Mets were regarded a lot like the Jets. And we always would say, what are we going to do to get players to want to come here? We're going to have to change the whole chemistry and that whole, the mindset of Mets being losers, Wilpons not spending money, what can go wrong will always go wrong. And we kind of broke it a little bit with Lindor, 4 years ago. But to me, this is, we clearly got the best player on the market. We've got a future Hall of Famer who's in his prime. He just turned 26 years old. He had his best season yet. And to me, he just does things that other players don't do. If you look on the surface, you might say, well, yeah, okay, he hit 40 home runs last year. He's probably not going to hit 40 with the Mets. And, he's probably going to be a 30 overall for the course of his career. He's a low 30s, 100 RBIs. I don't know, 270, 280 average. And that's all really good, especially nowadays when nobody bats 300. But what to me makes the difference and what's going to get him in the Hall of Fame and be regarded as one of the greatest players of all time is his on-base percentage. Right now, he's on a historic clip there, and if he stays at that point, he will, go down to history as maybe the greatest on-base percentage player in the history of the game. He's going to draw walks. He's going to work counts. He's got a good eye at the plate. He's not going to give up at bats. He's going to work pitchers, pitch counts up, all the things that we haven't seen from the Mets, over the years. And again, going back to the old days, I'm always like, why don't these guys look to take the walk more? Walks like a single, and they just don't play that way anymore. But here's a guy who plays that way, but he's not like a 240, 250 hitter with no pop. He's going to give you all the superstar credentials, but at the same time, going to take the mindset at the plate. And this guy may force a pitcher to throw an extra 20 pitches and 4 or 5 at bats every single time he comes up. And that's where I think you're going to see the difference. I don't see him changing as far as that goes, but imagine him batting somewheres around Lindor and Nimmo, and maybe Nimmo can get back to playing that type of, mindset as well when he comes up to bat. And, you got pitchers maybe throwing 25, 30 pitches in the first inning. Even if you don't score a run, that's a big deal. So for the, the average fan and maybe an uneducated fan doesn't understand, he's a good player, but you can't equate the money. But when you're really looking to breaking down the on-base percentage and working the pitcher and getting a pitcher out of the game and making a pitcher stress on their pitches, he's unprecedented. And that's where I think that we're going to really see the difference when it comes to Juan Soto versus other superstar players in baseball.
Yeah, no, you're 100% correct. And, we've all three used the word unprecedented. And I think outside of the number, 765 million, outside of the length, 15 years, the age, the guy's 26 years old. And we're talking about a guy who potentially hasn't even reached his prime yet. That is maybe a year or 2 years away from really being at the peak of his game. Most of these guys that reach free agency and are getting these deals and these major contracts, they're 31, they're 32. We're getting a guy that is 26 years old, and we have him under control essentially until he is 41. Is he going to be in the Mets everyday lineup at 41? No. Is he going to be at the Mets everyday lineup at 39? Probably not. Is he going to be on the Mets everyday lineup at 37? Who knows? But from 26 to 32 for the next 6 to 8 years, you can guarantee that you got a guy that A is going to get on base, B is going to hit for power, C is going to hit for average. And now you've got a lineup that consists of Lindor, Soto, Vientos, potentially bringing back Alonso, Nimmo. You're going to have guys where on the Dodgers – when in the series against the Dodgers, it seemed like, we got to get 7-8 runs or we're not going to win this game. Hopefully, and eventually, this Mets lineup appears to be the same type of featured lineup of, game in, game out in a post-game series that you're going to have to put up runs because it's only a matter of time before Lindor gets his pitch. Soto gets his pitch. Vientos gets his pitch. And, Dad, you made a comment. You said you're not going to get into the little brother, big brother thing. I will. I'll get right into it because it is time. It's every record is meant to be broken. Every dog has its day. Every rose has its thorn, and it's time. The Mets and the Yankees. We've been the little brother. There is no denying that when you look at the Yankees' history. But guess what? We're in a new generation. The historic Yankees and what they did 50 years ago, what they did 60 years ago, what they did 40 years ago does not matter to this generation of players. It does not matter to Juan Soto. It does not matter to guys that are being forced to shave their face, being forced to pay for family suites, being forced to pay for lounges for their friends and family to come watch them play. The integrity of the game is not the same of what it used to be. And it's just a generational difference, and it's time. It's due. It's due that the Mets now have the richest owner in baseball. It's due that the Mets are now the destination that teams are going to want to go to or players are going to want to go to when they're looking at teams on the East Coast. It's going to be this constant battle now for the next decade, 2 decades, potentially longer, between Steve Cohen and the Mets and the Dodgers in terms of backing up the Brinks truck, paying for these guys. And while everyone can ridicule $765 million, that's way too much money. That's an overpay. Look at the market. Other guys are going to continuously get big, large contracts. Vladimir Guerrero is going to be Vlad Guerrero Jr. is going to be a free agent next year. Is he a top 10 player in baseball? Probably not. If he puts up even resembling numbers that he did this year, he's going to get a $500-600 million deal. And we're talking about a guy that's probably not a top 10 player in baseball. It's just the nature of the game. You want to go out and get these guys, you got to spend the money. Kyle, you said it best. It's not your money. It's not my money. It's not my dad's money. Who cares? Go out, get guys, field the championship team, field a lineup, field a team and a lineup that are going to go out and compete for 162. And then when it matters most in a best of 3, a best of 5, or a best of 7, give it your best go round. Hope your bats get hot. Hope your pitching gets hot. And it's just a no-brainer. And the most hilarious thing to me, and the proof in the pudding in terms of little brother, big brother, is for about 14 days, and even going past that, the Yankees had nothing but good things to say about – Yankees fans had nothing but good to say about Juan Soto. He's coming home. He's going to respect the Yankee loyalty. He's going to respect the history. Why would you want to go across town and play for the Mets? And now that Juan Soto's a Met, it's thank God we got bailed out and not have to shell out $800 million for this guy. This guy's a defensive liability. He never won an MVP. Now we can take that money and fill the additional holes in their roster, which is probably the smartest thing to do for the Yankees. But it's just delusional, and it's coping, and it's fans taking a loss and considering they lost the World Series a month and a half ago, and now they lose arguably their best player, second best player, you can say. I can get why they're salty, but there is a new little brother in New York City, and it is the New York Yankees.
Hey, Kyle?
Either one of you can share that.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly hilarious. Like the Yankee fans are posting his defensive highlights from last year, saying, "Oh, this is what you paid, $765 million." Yeah. Fantastic, great. I'm so glad that you guys are so it is honestly hilarious, and I just agree that it's finally, I think, a new reign, and I'm just so glad that Cohen is willing to spend the money, and he honestly has a real passion for the Mets being good, and a real passion for this is a side gig for him. He just wants to see his team win and be successful, and you don't want anything else in an owner. So I'm excited to see what happens, and I'm sure we'll talk about what we should do next and all that kind of good stuff. So.
Yeah, I didn't hear any Yankee fans complaining when the rumors were flying that the Yankees and Mets were both kind of even at about the 730, 740 million mark. I didn't hear Yankee fans coming out and saying, "Oh, forget it, we don't want him. It's too expensive." It was only afterwards that they're saying this. Now, when Yankee fans start talking about their 27 rings, that's when you know they're struggling, because they always fall back on that past. And some of my best friends are Yankee fans, and they're very supportive of the Mets. In fact, sometimes when I've been down, they've been more optimistic about the Mets than I have. So it's not all the Yankee fans, but just in general on social media, you see a lot of sour grapes right now, and Yankee fans tend to sometimes come across as just like entitled because of the history and their success in the past, and their entitlement to make the postseason every year. And it must suck that if you don't win a World Series, the season's a failure. And that's kind of where they're at to some degree. And they've always been kind of insecure Met fans. And anytime the Mets have had a little success, and it's not that often, they seem to take exception to it. And they don't like us ever basking in our glory, as little as we get. But moving on from the Yankees, my biggest concern is not the Yankees, is the other teams in the National League. And right now, I don't think it's even close. I was thinking about this before. I think there's at least 6 teams. Now, it could change by the time free agency is over, but I think there's at least 6 teams in the National League right now that are better than the best team in the American League. And I still right now would have to put the Yankees as the best team. They went to the World Series, and their competitors so far haven't gotten any better, being Baltimore, Cleveland, Houston. So I believe that right now, with Atlanta getting back Austin Riley and Ronald Acuna and probably Spencer Strider, I look at the Braves, the Phillies, the Mets, the Brewers, the Padres, and the Dodgers. I feel they're all better than the best team in the American League right now. And I'm not, and excuse me, I don't sleep on Arizona either, because Arizona came within 1 game of making the playoffs, and they may, who knows what they would have done. They showed 2 years ago they went right to the World Series. So there might be actually 7 teams in the National League right now that are better than the best team in the American League. So that's why the Mets need to do this, to compete and keep up with the power. If the Mets were in the American League, they might have been the best team in the American League last year, and they certainly are by far right now. Yeah. So I'm happy they got Soto, but I'm not like, hey, we got a clear path to the World Series. I don't even know if we'll finish second in our division. And be honest with you, it's going to be a dogfight. I think we have enough to get to the playoffs, but I don't know where we go from there just yet. It's going to be a dogfight all the way through. So Steve Cohen is basically saying, if we want to be a powerhouse, we want to get to where we want to get to, we're going to have to be as good as all those other powerhouses right now in the National League. It's kind of unfortunate that in all these years now that the Mets are finally good at spending money and got all this superstar talent, that we've got all this power unevenly distributed in the National League, but that's just the way it is. So right now, I like the way I look at it is we got to worry about our own division and our own league, and not so much the Yankees, because right now the American League, in general, the Mets no longer being the little brother to the Yankees. Well, right now it looks like the American League is the little brother to the National League, and that doesn't equate well out for us. So we need to spend this kind of money. We need to bring in the superstars to stay up with those other teams.
Yeah. No, and you talk about, the road to the postseason, the road to the World Series, and him staying in with the Yankees could have obviously been the easy way out. Could have been the premier path to a consistent World Series, to consistent success. Something that me and Kyle talked about, Dad, I know we've talked about it in the past too, is this kind of move outside of where Soto fits in the lineup, where he's going to play in the field. This kind of statement sends a message to the rest of the league that we're here to compete. We're here to at least consistently, year in, year out, when you talk about at the beginning of the year, at the middle of the year, who is vying for playoff positioning, who is vying for a realistic shot at winning a World Series. The Mets are now going to be in that discussion, are now going to be in that image. And you talk about the division. There's talent across the board. I don't think it was one of those decisions that it was all about money. I do think he sees a clear path to success, a clear path to a future where him and Lindor and the Dominican connection that he has with Marte and some of the other teammates. There's rumors that him and Clay Holmes are great friends. I don't know if that's true, or if that is just Mets fans pouring on the gasoline to Yankees fans in terms of the relationships the Mets are building in order to acquire and now play and field Juan Soto. But the whole shift, the whole paradigm has now changed because of this single move. And you're talking about a team that just went to an NLCS, that came essentially 2 games short of a World Series, and a player that just got the fresh taste of sting of losing a World Series, now coming to a team that has the fresh sting of not even making the World Series. So I expect there to be a competitive hunger. I expect there to be a chemistry of teammates and competitors that are going to go out and want to win every single day. We talk about, I want to say 3 summers ago, the lineup of the core of Nimmo and Dom Smith and Jeff McNeil, and how they were all best friends, and everyone got along and everybody was like a family. yet nobody won. Now it feels like we have a little bit of both. We have a cohesion of a roster that's talented, uber talented, and then we have a collection of players that are going to be close knit, that are going to keep it close to home, and hopefully week in, week out, day in, day out, go out and compete at the highest level in all of baseball. There's obviously a ton of time before that opening day, which also means there's a ton of moves that are yet to be made. What the roster is on paper at this very moment is a lot different from what the roster will look like on April 1st, and a lot different from what the roster will look like, October 1st. So just touching on that, let's go ahead and spin it. We got Juan Soto. There's more money to be spent. We got the richest owner in baseball. Couple moves that you guys see coming up next.
Go ahead.
Go. You
want me to go first? All right. Well, one thing I want to mention before we transition to the move is one thing that I want to mention as far as his contract that hasn't been brought up yet, but there's a player opt-out after 5 years. And that kind of also helps the Mets a little bit because, and that's where the contract could come out to $805 million, actually. He can opt out after 5 years. I doubt if he'll do that because he'll be 31. No matter how good he is, I just don't see another team giving him more than $51 million a year at age 31. But for whatever reason, if things go south or, the worst case scenario, he can opt out. But what the Mets can do to prevent that opt out is raise his salary from $51 million a year to $55 million a year, hence bringing it up to $805. So there are some stipulations along the way. Hopefully we won't cross that bridge. But, there is an out on both ends, more or less. But there's also more protection on the Mets side than there is on Soto's side there. So that's one thing I wanted to mention that we hadn't talked about was there are some stipulations to that contract.
Yeah.
So anyway, go ahead.
I was going to say the reality of him getting a contract at 31 at the magnitude that he got at 26 is not, is not the threatening thing. It's more so, I think, if I'm not mistaken, by the time he's of age 31, which would be, I guess, his fifth season, after his fifth season, he's eligible to get 55 a year annually rather than 51.
I'm losing you.
You lost me?
Yeah, you're back now.
I said the opt out is if he opts in, he's guaranteed to collect 55 million a year rather than 51. And I just don't think that the market on the table for him at age 31 is going to be of that value unless we see contracts getting handed out at that point for $1.5 billion, which I just don't see to be the case.
Yeah. So it's something to consider as well. But anyways, moving on to, and I'll turn it over to you guys as far as where the Mets go from here. Let's talk about Alonso. I kind of like, I don't know if it's a sentimentality thing or, just, dwelling back on the postseason. During the regular season, I was kind of like ready to move on if need be. But the more I've thought about it, we don't get as far as if Alonso doesn't hit that home run against the Brewers, the season doesn't go as far as it did. It's not quite as magical. He wants to be here. He's always, said that. As far as what he does, home runs, no one's hit more home runs than him, I think, over the last 6 or 7 years. And, I think Soto came here to stop at this point, just kind of doesn't do the the signing complete justice. So I want to see Alonso come back. I want us to once have a homegrown Met that plays his whole career. The Mets have been in existence now 7 years, and our all-time leading home run hitter in a Met uniform is Darryl Strawberry still. I think it's around anywhere from 250 to 270. That's too low. I want to see Alonso stay here, hit 450, 500 lifetime home runs, go into the Hall of Fame as a Met, and just raise the bar as far as our organization goes. Because we have some great players, but compared to other teams, our all-time team leaders are low, including home runs. So I'd really like to see one guy actually stay here for his whole career and up those numbers. So my first choice for the next guy coming in is Alonso. I think he wants to be here. I think the only way he's not here is if Boris decides that they're going to try to go way above what, the agreement would kind of be as far as what both sides think he's worth. And I don't think he'll do that. As long as it's within reason, maybe around the 180 to 200 million over 6 years or so, I think he'll come back. And he wants to be here. And I think that's an important piece. It gives us that murderer's row now of Lindor, Alonso, Soto, and you can even throw Vientos in there. I need to see it again, but you can throw him in there as well. So to me, I want Alonso back. I think it's a big piece to the team's future and puzzle, and I think it justifies and makes the Soto signing even that much more, I guess I said before, justifiable.
Yeah. Kyle?
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, you just look at the baseball side of the Soto signing. He left Aaron Judge, the biggest protector that you could get in Major League Baseball. You go, and I'm sure that was part of the discussion when Soto was meeting with, and I know Passan came out with it and said that was one of the big issues that, or the concerns that he had with signing with the Mets is who was his protection going to be. And I've listened to Passan and Ken Rosen, all the inside guys, and they talked about how Boris likes to twine clients together. And I guarantee you, when they were talking about Soto, Boris was like, hey, if you do this for Soto, I'll kind of give you maybe a little break with Alonso a little bit. Alonso wants to come back. I won't try to screw, something like that. I'm sure those two were twined together because I'm sure Pete has let Boris know that he wants to be a Met. And why wouldn't you want to be a Met after signing Juan Soto? Yeah. And again, it gives him that protection. Yes, Pete's not going to hit, but again, you have to worry about Pete as well. Again, if you don't sign Pete, I mean, who do you go sign Christian Walker? Do you go again? They're not going to compare in the power category as what Pete did. And again, it just makes sense. Again, you left Aaron Judge to come to the second best home run hitter in New York, right? So again, it kind of makes perfect sense signing Soto and kind of bringing back Alonso.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, it seems like a no-brainer. Alonso gets paid. He stays in New York. He stays with a nucleus of guys that essentially he's been brought up with, that he has had a career with. And then you get to pair the idea of that front four when you're talking about Lindor, Soto, Vientos, Pete Alonso. I think if we get a similar Alonso that we got at the tail end of last season when we were, as fans, begging him to step up, begging him to do something, if we get that over 162, it's not going to be the prettiest thing. But I think just the idea of the danger of the first three guys, it's inevitable that Alonso is going to get more pitches to hit. It's inevitable that he's going to get more at-bats. It's inevitable, but that he's going to get more opportunities. And like I said, after getting paid, after having the comfort of knowing where you're going to be long-term, that can have a mental difference on a player. And I'm sure, especially in a guy like Alonso's shoes, who has done things for the franchise that nobody's ever done, it can be like a weight off the shoulder. So it seems inevitable. It almost seems like it's at what point do we hear about it? Is it going to be one of those things that rolls into late January or early February? Kyle, you're shaking your head. I'm not sure. I would hope not. I think the longer it goes, the less likely it means that he's a Met. But I've been on this side of the fence for since the end of the season, the start of free agency. Juan Soto being a Met means that Pete Alonso being a Met is more likely. And some would beg to differ because of the money. There is no salary cap. There is no point where Steve Cohen has to say, I have to stop spending money. There is none of that. So the idea that Alonso was not going to be a Met was very largely tied to Soto is not coming to the Mets. I think if Soto would have gone to the Yankees, it would have been more likely that the Mets would have been able to let Pete go because they would have made another big fish move, whether it would have been a Devers or other names that we've talked about, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. or things of that nature. So I think it's inevitable that Pete comes back home. He gets paid. He gets to stay with the Mets. Like you said, Dad, he gets to tack on to being that potentially franchise player that when I have grandkids, I get to say, oh, I grew up in my heyday, I watch Pete Alonso. Now he's in the Hall of Fame with 500 plus home runs. Kind of like you're able to talk about Tom Seaver, like you're able, able to talk about Gary Carter and Darryl Strawberry and Doc Gooden, the likes of those guys. When I'm at that point, I will be talking hopefully about Lindor, Soto, Alonso. And then another guy who's getting paid a boatload of money is Brandon Nimmo. He's kind of going under the radar here, but he's going to be a crucial piece in how Soto fits in the lineup and how the rest of the lineup shapes out in terms of, is Nimmo going to be a guy that's batting second, batting third, or is he going to be batting sixth? And I think that largely comes out to what happens to Alonso and what happens at maybe second base with the young guys, I should say, or is it Neil, or what do we do with DH? But one thing on the top priority is Alonso. I think it gets done. And then I think right after that, we'd probably all agree, starting pitching. You got to get a starting pitcher. And I think we need a gun. I think we need a guy that's going to go out there, and every time he steps on the mound, you expect to at least have a very good chance to win.
Yeah, first of all, just ending up with Alonso, but also I think the fact that he's no longer in a contract year, I think he's that kind of guy that lets that pressure weigh on him a little bit, and I think that will change now that he's locked in. Hopefully, Soto's presence may help him in starting to lay off those outside low pitches that he swings at. That pitchers just know he's going to bite out every time. So maybe that Soto's presence will rub off there. And just to show where we're going with salaries, it's hard to believe that 4 years ago we were talking about how Lindor, signed a 10-year deal worth $341 million, and now it looks like a bargain. Where can you get a player of his caliber for $34 million? So there's no doubt about it. In 4 years from now, we're probably going to see the first billion-dollar player. I don't know who that's going to be yet, but you could bet it's coming. It's never going to stop. But it's just amazing how Lindor now looks like a bargain. I'm wondering to some degree at some point, out of respect, Cohen gives Lindor maybe an extra $10 million or something along the way there for being a good leader, because it's not even half now of what Soto's making. So it's just crazy how the market has changed.
Yeah.
But getting into pitching, I think we got to look at who's available, but also the philosophy of Stearns. If I had to make a prediction, I think Manaea is back. I know you got Max Fried. I know you got Corbin Burns out there. Burns would be probably the guy if we could get him. But again, you got to keep in mind, we're already going to give up 2 high draft picks to one guy who was given a qualifying offer in Soto. And if we sign Burns, that's 2 more draft picks we got to give up. I don't know if Stearns wants to do that, because he's made it clear that he's not exactly 100% satisfied with our minor league system, and giving up 4 picks all within, I think, the first 5 or 6 rounds. I don't know if he wants to do that. So I think Burns is out. I don't think Fried was ever a guy that was going to be of interest. He's 30 years old. He's had some injuries. Yeah, he's a lefty, and he's a solid pitcher. But I think Stearns is kind of the mindset. It's very risky. Unless you get a young pitcher in his prime, I think he feels that just about anyone is susceptible to getting hurt and getting Tommy John. And that's why we see the kind of guys he's bringing in already, like Clay Holmes and Frankie Montas. And I think the guy will be Manaea, and that will basically we'll go to camp with those guys, and there'll be a battle for that 5th spot amongst probably 4 or 5 guys. So I think Manaea will be the guy starting pitching-wise. I think bullpen-wise, you're seeing it right now. I'd love to have Tanner Scott on the team, but the Mets are just not going to – they're already paying Diaz $20 million for 3 more years. They're not going to – and Tanner Scott is arguably just as good, if not better, and younger at this point. So I don't see the Mets allotting $35 to $40 million a year for 2 relievers. So knowing that where Stearns' philosophy is as far as relief pitchers – being kind of fickle from year to year, I think you're seeing it right now. I think bullpen moves wise, you're going to see Ryan Stanek maybe come back. I don't know if Johnny Loaizaga is official or not. I read something today that he was. I don't know if it is. He's a reclamation project who's been really good when he's healthy. Mm-hmm. So you could see Loaizaga, you could see Ryan Stanek. I've wanted to get David Robertson back. I don't know how he views him, but I think that's what you're going to see with the bullpen, and they're going to hope that they find another Reed Garrett and a Dednail Nunez out of the group. So that's where I think we're going with the pitching.
Yeah, I mean, I listened to Stern's interview at the winter meetings yesterday, coming to work this morning, and he had a couple interesting things to say, kind of how he viewed the pitching and what he said. And they asked him if he was satisfied with the rotation. He said, "I think we're getting close with the moves that we made and that we're currently making right now." So you assume that something's in the pipeline that he's already thinking or happening, and there's a couple options that I think that they're going to go. I kind of disagree with the Manaea take. I think someone's going to give him 4 years, and I don't think we're going to do that. I think it all depends on Fried's decision. I saw that Fried's kind of deciding between the Yankees and the Red Sox right now. If the Red Sox miss out, I saw the Red Sox love Manaea. I feel like they would overpay to get him. And being 30, I think he's 32, 33. Somewhere around that range, I think you see a regression. The one guy, I've been pretty decent on these predictions. I think I'm going to go out on a limb and say another one. I think the one guy you probably will see in a New York Met uniform next year is Walker Buehler. I think he's a guy that the Mets, that Stearns loves hey, let's give you a 1 to 2 year contract. And it's the perfect situation for Walker Buehler. You're on a high leverage team. You give him a 1 year, maybe $30 million deal, right? We saw in the postseason that he was healthy. Again, it's a prove me year for him, right? Again, because when he's on, he's one of the top 5 pitchers in baseball, in my opinion, top 10. And again, he's one of those guys that you give him a year, he's fully healthy. He's going to go sign a 5-year, 4-year, $100-something million contract. No one's going to give him that right now. Absolutely nobody. So again, that's a guy that I have an inkling that we are going to possibly give a 1 year high AAV guy. And you always have to look at the trade market with all of these young infielders that can possibly not play the infield at the same time, along with Jeff McNeil. Again, there's one big horse that everybody's talking about. It's Garrett Crochet. Again, he has 2 years under control. Again, he's getting paid $2 million this year. Again, why not? Right? You have all the pieces. You can give him an Acuna or a Beatty or whoever you want. And again, be satisfied because, again, Soto's got a prime of 5 years left, maybe more, right? Lindor has a prime of however long left. You're in a win-now situation. That's the expectation. So, again, but my honest prediction is I think Walker Buehler is going to be a New York Met next year.
Was he offered a qualifying offer by the Dodgers or no?
Do you know? No, he did not.
Okay. That means he wasn't costing any draft picks then.
Yeah. The only Dodger offered, I think, was Teoscar Hernandez, and he didn't accept it. But, Kyle, I got to admit, when you start talking pitching and you start talking pitchers, it gets me fired up a little bit because if anybody knows, it's you, former college pitcher, and obviously current, baseball guy, baseball coach. I love the Walker Buehler prediction. It's not something that I've hung my hat on, essentially, not something that I've necessarily expected to happen, but you're 100% right. It's a prove it year. It's a classic Stearns move. And from what we've seen thus far, it's here's a lump sum of money, go out there and put us in a position to where, just like we weren't talking about Manaea this time last year, are we going to be talking about Buehler in the sense of in a game 5? When it got to that postseason series against the Dodgers, every time Manaea was on the bump the next game, you knew we just got to get to that one. We just got to get to that one. And in the end, he ran out of gas, and it ended up not working in our favor. But he is a large reason of why we got there. So another signing, another guy like that, a workhorse, to where you go out and prove it. And then if Manaea gets 4 years, X amount of money, you'll see the same thing for Walker Buehler next year, whether it's with the Mets or whether it's with another team. So I love that. I'll definitely have to keep my eye on that. My prediction isn't necessarily a signing. I would love to get Manaea back. I think that there is an obvious regression coming at some point, and maybe a Taijuan Walker-like regression where we see him hot to start the beginning of this year, and then maybe by the All-Star break, post-All-Star break, we start to see that slow descent. I just get that feeling. There's no statistical reasoning that I bring that up. It's more of a gut feeling. And also, just the idea of him going out and getting a 4-year or 5-year deal from a team that's going to be pitcher hungry. I think he'd love to be back in New York. From what the reports say, they love Manaea. Manaea loves the Mets. But it's a business at the end of the day, and Stearns seems to be conducting this as a business with some of the moves he makes. My prediction is going to be a trade for Crochet. You mentioned it. I think it's the most obvious fit. I think you could see a tandem of Crochet being added along with Luis Robert Jr., a center fielder. I think that's between the likes of, you said it, Beatty, Acuna, McNeil, Mauricio. I think you can kind of throw in a mixture, a skitter scatter, a pitter patter of those guys. And the White Sox are in desperate need of MLB talent, and they're in desperate need of pipeline talent. So I think it's the stars are beginning to align in terms of Crochet. I believe is going to be under contract this season and the next. So it makes all the sense in the world to, if you're going to go out, get a young arm and maybe a trade for him, and then by All-Star break this year, you give him an extension and don't have to worry about him facing the free agency in 2 years. So it just seems like a baseball smart move. It seems like a baseball savvy move. And then you talk about the likes of Juan Soto and his defense. Maybe you don't have to worry about that so much if you got a guy like Luis Robert Jr. in center field. You can bump Nimmo, or you can bump whoever you need to across the outfield. And I don't think you're going to see that dramatic of a difference in the defensive outfield. And we've said it once, we've said it many times, and I'll say it again. Are the Mets ever going to have a bona fide center fielder? It was supposed to be Marte, then it was supposed to be Nimmo, and it's still a question mark. And I think if you're a Mets fan, starting pitching and a defensive center fielder, or really any bona fide center fielder, has to be on the top of your brain. And why not do it in one move? Why not go out there, package a McNeil, package a Beatty, package maybe a Parada, and go out and get a Crochet, go out and get a Luis Robert Jr., get them both at the same time, and you've essentially now kind of wrapped up your winter off season, and you've got a starting lineup you can throw out there, and then you've got 6 pitchers, honestly, that you can go out and rely on for the span of hopefully 162. So that's my take. I think that it makes all the sense in the world from a financial standpoint, from a prospect standpoint, and from just where our roster is positioned in order to make a run. I really like the idea of a Crochet Robert Jr. combo, whether you want to call it a blockbuster deal or a whole. I think the Mets have what it takes to get it done.
Yeah, and it just depends on what the White Sox want, because Stearns in that interview said he was content with Geary and Taylor kind of tandeming that center field role.
Yeah.
He said he was very comfortable with having both of them out there in terms of – because you guys, if you guys haven't listened to his interview, you guys need to go listen to it after this, because it gives a really good intel on what he's thinking and kind of where the team's about to go and what they're trying to do pretty much. So, yeah. But, yeah, I think
we're sharing the brain on that one, Kyle. I think they're going to go with Siri and Taylor. But one thing I want to add to that, I think the main reason they're doing that is they're kind of placeholders. I think they're holding out for the next center fielder. They're hoping to be Drew Gilbert. He's the guy. He might, I don't know, he might be number one now in the rankings in the farm system. So I don't see if they make a trade for a center fielder, it's going to be a stopgap guy for a year or two. And I don't know why they would do that. So I got to disagree as far as trading there. I think they're going to be perfectly content to go with Siri and Taylor. If it doesn't work out, they'll pick up someone at the deadline just for the rest of the year. But I think the plan is at some point, maybe at the latest September, if not sooner, that we see Drew Gilbert up on the roster. If he has a great spring and he just tears it up, no one expected Alonso to come out of camp and make the year that year, but they were forced to. So, anywhere from making the roster in April to September, I expect Drew Gilbert to be given the chance to be the guy. Now, will he turn out to be? Yet to be determined. But I think they're keeping these guys as place setters for Drew Gilbert, and they're hoping he is that center fielder, Matt, that you were talking about.
Yeah. It's a long time coming, and the reason I like Robert Jr. is I just think he fits the dynamic of Citi Field, and it's more of a fan
Yeah.
from a fan standpoint, it's like, why not get them both? Why you want tacos and you want burritos? Just get them both in at the same time. But I think a prospect we're not talking about, and a lot of it's due to injuries, Jet Williams. And the idea of now Mauricio coming back and getting healthy, it's just coming and going. It's coming to a point where these prospects either have to get moved or they have to produce. Not so much with the center fielder, or not so much with Vientos has showed us what he can done. Beatty, it's like we're 50-50 on. You never know. One week he's not going to be a Met. He's on the move. The next week they see a future in him. They're intrigued by him. The latest report is that teams around the league are intrigued by his power and his bat. And the Mets aren't going to just give up on him for nothing. They've held on him for this long. But the odd man out in this situation is one or two of Williams, Beatty, Acuna, and Mauricio. So it's got to shake up, and I don't think they give up a guy for a bag of chips. So Crochet in that scenario seems like the get, and I think the White Sox are just looking to unload what they got, restart, do it all over again.
Yeah, I could see Beatty going and attaching one of the other big name prospects.
Yeah.
In a couple of years, there's going to be two spots in the infield. Second, McNeil, if he doesn't get traded, he's got 2 years left on his deal. And I think Vientos may end up playing third this year, but I still don't think long term he's the answer at third. Yeah. So you could see eventually Acuna and Jet Williams or Mauricio. I think Mauricio starts the year in the minors after missing all last year. And remember, he was always a little shaky defensively, and I don't know if they're sure yet what his position is. If I had to predict any guy to make it, I have to go with Acuna, obviously, because we saw a little bit of him, and he fielded pretty well at shortstop in pressure situations in the playoffs right now. So I think you got to look at the future. I think there's enough room there for two of those four guys, but I think Beatty and one probably get traded for someone. I agree with you guys. I believe there's going to be a trade. I just don't know who it's going to be. I wouldn't be shocked if the trade is made and they get a pitcher and a relief pitcher that we haven't mentioned yet that's not even on our radar. So Don't be shocked if that happens either.
I didn't touch on Burns. I think Burns would be the workhorse fit. I just think at this point, I think it's not that the Mets don't have the money. It's that the Mets are willing to spend money elsewhere rather than on a guy like Corbin Burns, who seems to be on the back end of a dominant stretch in his career. And then another guy that I didn't touch on, I meant to. In fact, none of us did. And maybe it's a sign, but Roki Sasaki from Japan, it sounds like it's down to Mets, Padres, Dodgers. Dodgers have seemed like the obvious fit from day one. Supposedly his camp is infatuated with Jeremy Hefner and his ability to train pitchers and progress them. So,
which is crazy to think about.
Yeah, he's lasted 3 different coaching staffs now. You got to give him credit for that. There's got to be something in the water. So, all right, guys. Well, just to wrap these things up, I'm sure at some point between now and March, we'll have another one of these because there will be more moves made, whether it's Pete Alonso, whether it's Corbin Burns, whether it's Sasaki, whether it's Manaea comes back, or whether it is a trade for a guy like Crochet. Or am I delusional for still thinking that Vlad Jr. is still on the table? Maybe a little bit, but you never know. You got Steve Cohen at the helm. So final thoughts from you guys before we wrap it up. Let's hear it.
Well, I'm going to ask you guys. I got a little thing stayed. I've come up with about 5 or 6 guys, kind of role players, and you tell me whether you think they're going to be on the team or not come April. I'll start off, and then you can. I'm going to start with what's his name? OMG guy, Jose Iglesias. What do you think? Yeah, is he stay or nay?
Yes.
I stay. He's going to be on the team.
To start the year.
Matt.
To start the year, I believe so. I think the camaraderie in the locker room, I think if the production aligns with what it was last year, it'll be a mainstay. But I could just see one of the young guys outing him by midseason if the production isn't there.
Do you see the Mets going 2 years with him? If another team offers a 2-year deal now? No?
I could see 1 year and a team option.
Yes, right. I could see that too.
Yeah.
Okay, so you both are staying with Iglesias. Well, then if I'm going with Iglesias, I don't know, like the next guy I got to ask you, Jesse Winker. Is he going to be here or not?
No, not with Soto's on it.
My
Okay.
heart says yes. My brain says no. Well, I would love for him to be a guy off the bench, a bat off the bench, but it's with Soto here, and like I said, I'm predicting another move be made in the outfield.
Yeah.
I don't Winker.
I agree. Now, my answer to Winker would be, I guess, what we come up with this next guy. What happens to him? Starling Marte. Is he going to be here or not? He's only got 1 year left on that deal.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think the answer is yes, and because of that, it's 1 year left, and
Correct.
he's Dominican. He's vouched and recruited for Soto. I think he'll be here.
Correct.
Okay, so yes for both. Ryan Stanek, is he back or not? Do they sign him?
I hope so. I
He
hope
better
so.
be. Yeah, he better be. He was outside of. I mean, you can argue he was the most consistent arm out of the bullpen in the postseason this past year. So he better be. At least give him a shot.
So we're hoping he's back.
Yep.
I just can't visualize. I can't. I mean, I'm going back. I think I'm getting double thing there. Going back to Marte for a minute, I can't visualize Marte as a DH.
No, I think his. First of all, he doesn't hit for power. Second of all, I'm not sure if that's mine or if that's. We're getting a double echo.
We're getting a double now.
But he doesn't hit for power. He really doesn't hit for average. He doesn't have a lot of speed. I think Marte will be on the team solely because his contract is going to be due after this year. I think he's built relationships with the players. From what I gather, him and Juan Soto have been best friends for a long time now. Even more so, I assume. I don't see Marte as a DH, but you got to think that's a long contract they just gave Soto. I wouldn't be surprised if the platooning started ASAP.
Exactly.
ASAP.
That's what
Well, my
that
last
was.
guy for you guys is Jeff McNeil. Is he on the team opening day?
Yes.
I'm going to say no. I think no. I think, like I said, these young guys are budding. Somebody's got to play. Somebody's going to get moved. I think the most likely outcome, if a Crochet move is made, is a McNeil, Parada, Beatty combo. Like I said, White Sox need MLB talent. They need farm talent, and they need they need guys that are ready to produce in the MLB and in the AAA level to work their way up. So I'm going to go McNeil. No, it kind of feels like he's overstayed his welcome a little too long anyways. That's just my opinion. For the entertainment purposes of the show, I will be disagreeing with Kyle and say he's going to be a White Sox in about 4
What
days.
about Tyler McGill?
Yes, I think he vies for. I think Stearns, and again, I go back to Stearns' interview yesterday. He said Stearns and Buto are going to be pushed like starters this offseason, and then if they get to camp and they feel, and the after camp, if they feel like they need to shorten them up, they'll shorten them up and put both of them in the bullpen.
Yeah. One thing the Mets didn't seem to have is a long reliever, a guy that's going to go out for the span of an entire season, even the postseason. And when your starting pitcher gets knocked out in the second or third inning, a guy that's going to go eat up 6 innings, and I think that's got McGill or even a Budo written all over it. It's funny because Budo went from he's your 100% eighth inning guy to he's probably looking like your 4th or 5th best option going into the season, at least optimistically.
Yeah. Well, I think Loaizaga, if they did sign him, he's another guy that could be that rotating starter, long reliever. I don't know if I'm having a problem with my volume there, but I think Loaizaga could fall into that category as well. So summing things up, just based on your guys' predictions, and you're both saying there's going to be a trade, and so do I. Based on what I'm reading here, the trade could be Beatty, McNeil, and 2 prospects for a pitcher.
Yeah,
correct.
I think that's the most obvious fit. And I saw something earlier today. The Mets offer to the Nationals in 2016 was Beatty, Mauricio,
Vientos, Alvarez,
McNeil. Can't remember the other guy. 5 guys that are currently on the Mets for a guy that is also currently on the Mets. It was incredible to see because
Yeah.
if the Nationals would have accepted that trade, it would have decimated our depth. Who
And
knows what
Soto's
it'd be
not
like
a Met.
now? And Soto's probably not a Met. So
Right.
it was incredible to see because, like I said, it was the three of the kids at the time.
Yeah.
And then Alvarez, McNeil, and one other guy that's just, it was McGill. It was actually Tyler McGill. So got a few guys that we just talked about on the table for Juan Soto himself, and that was only, 6 years ago.
Another guy to keep in mind as far as a youngster that I think this guy definitely gets traded is Kevin Paradas.
Yeah.
I mean, there's really no spot. We have our future catcher right now. There's no really place for him. I don't think they're going to keep a guy around just to be a backup. So don't be surprised if he's that fourth or fifth piece in a potential trade as well.
Yeah, that's the guy that I see on the move. Like if I could go on a sports book and bet on it, I'd bet as much money as I could on it. It just doesn't fit. A guy that was once viewed, I think, as the number one prospect on the team. I think if you go look at the team website now, he's like 15th or 16th. So a fall from grace, to say the least. So I think that's the move. My White Sox Mets prediction involves McNeil, Parada, and a combination of Mauricio or Beatty.
Yep.
So,
Well, Mookie says we've pretty much covered it all. The pitching, the relief pitching, the stars, the backups. We've done it all right now.
Yeah.
So I'll let you guys make the final thoughts. Anything that we haven't discussed yet that we need to be looking at between now and April?
Kyle, all you.
When we can all go on a road trip and go to a game.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, the rumor is, I want to say July 18th or 19th, somebody did some digging. In the middle of July, I want to say tickets increase at like a substantial amount, and it's on a Friday, Saturday.
Right. Yep.
From Friday to Saturday, the tickets go up almost like 60%, and the rumor is that David Wright's jersey is getting retired against the Cincinnati Reds at Citi Field. If that's the case,
We gotta go.
be there. I think we gotta be there. I don't think
gotta
it's
go.
a question. Just like we were supposed to go to the World Series. This is one of those where, the pressure's not exactly there. It's not as big of a game, but best Met of my lifetime thus far.
Yeah.
So I gotta go. We gotta go. Also, see Juan Soto put on those pinstripes.
Exactly.
I mean, this is a new era. Like I said, a new era, a new team, a new generation, and hopefully a long 25 years, 25 plus for you, Dad, of misery and letdown and holding on to hope is now over.
Hey, shout out to Carlos Mendoza's son.
Yeah.
I guess he knew something. It turns out he said 15,750. He was right there.
Yeah. Shout out to him and shout out to Steve Cohen. The guy's going to get a statue built outside of Citi Field of him one day. If this goes the way he wants it to go and the other Mets fans want it to go, he will end up with a statue. He will be known. He will be in the likes of the Steinbrenners and the Jerry Joneses and the whoever else you want to call it. He will be one of the greatest owners in all of sports, especially considering he took a lowly Mets franchise that had no hope, and now we're getting close to $1 billion deals for one single guy. So we're going to wrap it up, guys. It's about at the 58-minute mark, which we said we weren't going to get close to 59, but here we are. Time flies when you're having fun. Kyle, always good to have you on with us, man.
Always.
It's almost surreal in a sense because we talked about this, and here we are. Juan Soto is a New York Met. Dad, we're a long ways away from in 1984, Gary Carter signed for what?
He signed with the Mets in 85.
85?
Yeah.
For what? $500,000 and a bag of Tostitos, something along the lines of that.
Mickey Mantle was the first $100,000 player, and people made such a big deal that they were paying this guy $100,000 to play baseball. And probably by the time Carter came around, maybe there was a guy making close to $1 million, and they were making the same big deal. I can tell you, Gary Carter, Darryl Strawberry, none of them were making money like they do today.
Yeah.
Side note, because we have a minute left and it deserves about 10 seconds of our time. But the toilet bowl is this Sunday in Jacksonville between the Jets and the Jaguars.
Jets and Jags, that's the road trip, baby.
Are you going, Kyle?
No, I will never step foot in that stadium.
Wow.
Not right
I
now.
feel embarrassed right now.
It's awful.
That's Jags. Let's put a friendly wager on it. $20. We might as
All
well.
right, let's
We
do
might
it.
as well.
Mac
right,
Jones
guys.
versus Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
I'm taking the Jags with the points.
Guys,
I'm going with
appreciate
a
you tuning
tie.
in. If you're still in here, tuning in, appreciate you guys. Give us a like, give us a comment, give us a share. If you're a Yankee fan and you're pretty upset, just turn the podcast off and go on about your day. So we're right at that point where we got to get out of here, guys. We were in, we talked some Soto ball, and now we are out.